everybody, and welcome to our review of Spider-Man 2, which is now in stores, and we're talking about it a week later, which hopefully is not too late. Everybody already clicked the video off.
Goodbye. Hi and goodbye.
It was nice seeing y'all. In this video, I will be joined by a very good friend of mine. She's the Games PR person for Triple Point Games, and she also hosts her own podcast, Real Time Strategies. Welcome, Kaitlyn Red Wing, to the channel.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. Longtime listener and fan and friend. What a great topic to come on and talk about. I'm so excited to talk about Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. So thank you again. I'm excited to get into it.
So in Spider-Man 2, after the events of the first Spider-Man game in 2018 and Miles Morales, we're dealing with Peter and Miles being the two Spider-Men of New York, protecting people from all kinds of supervillains and new threats that are coming up from all over the place. However, when it seems like Kraven the Hunter has taken his hunt, no pun intended, to New York, and it seems like he's after our heroes, they have to do something to stop him. And there's also the symbiote, which is in the mix this time, which is, of course, going to lead to some much darker storytelling. Before we go any further, should let you know that there are going to be full spoilers in this review. You guys have been warned if you're still playing the game. Let's just put that out there. Come back and watch this video after. We won't be upset, I think. Okay. So
yeah, if you're someone who likes to spoil things for yourself, if you read the last page of a book before reading the book, you're an enemy in my eyes.
Right,
why would you do that?
I only did that one time in a bookstore, and I think I yelled it out loud. I was a kid.
Okay. Wait.
I was a kid. I was like 9 years old, and I was like, oh. And then everyone in the store was like, "Did you really just spoil that?" I'm sorry.
Was it Harry Potter? I'm just thinking of what would have been a big book to spoil when you were 9.
No further comment. There have been 2 games in this Insomniac Spider-Man universe so far. The first one in Miles Morales. You've played both of them, I assume. Mm-hmm. And what do you think of those 2 games?
What if I hadn't played it and you didn't know, and I just was never played Spider-Man before?
Then I do this review alone and this conversation over.
Goodbye. Once more. I loved Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Spider-Man was when I first bought oh my God, this is so long ago and I forgot about this. When I first bought my PS4, I want to say it was a PS4 Pro. I had never owned my own PlayStation. Spider-Man was the first game I played. Spider-Man really reignited my love for video games, and also probably one of the reasons I work in video games right now, just in general, because it was that snowball effect of I was chasing the high of Spider-Man. And then Miles Morales came out, and it was during COVID, right? Was it?
Mm-hmm.
What year did it come out?
2020.
Yeah. Yes, because I was I had just moved back home, I left New York City because of COVID, got laid off, and then I got my PS5. And Miles Morales was the first PS5 game I played. I just love Miles as a character, and his story just the emotional beats just really hit for me.
One of the first games that actually I ended up getting a PS4 only in 2017. The first game I got with that was Star Wars Battlefront 2, which, many folks will tell you that's not the best game to start off a PS4 experience with, but it's a fun time, but eventually I played Spider-Man and this is the best I've used the console so far. It's just such a great game. I mean, to give you an idea of how great the game is, I was playing it at that time. I was still, spending some time with family and during holidays and stuff. And my PlayStation 4 was lying there, and this is actually true. There were times where I was playing it so much, my dad would walk in and be like, "You need to stop playing, okay? It's been 5 hours. What's wrong with you?" It's like, sorry.
Only 5 hours, and he's being concerned. Wow.
5 hours, that was not there during Miles because it was all lockdowns and COVID, and that time I was still playing on a PS4. I didn't get a 5 until Feb 2021, a few months later. And then I eventually replayed it on the 5, and I thought it was a great experience. And I've loved both those games. I think the fundamental understanding of both the characters of Peter and Miles as Spider-Man comes through so well in both the games that they've done, especially when it also comes to the world building. You understand New York so well from the 2018 game's perspective. It beautifully realizes Harlem in Miles Morales, essentially all of the small cultural beats that are thrown in there naturally, I was very excited going into Spider-Man 2 because I think it's able to do the most with the tech of the console. Especially with Insomniac has done a great job with that, even with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Yeah. I feel like we take advantage of how good the PS5 controller is with just
Mhm.
like the vibrations and the sounds that come out, like the way like Venom's like some background noises were coming through, or like if you were swinging by one of the spider bots, you could hear like in your controller like the little like clickety clacks of like a mechanical spider crawling. Um, and I had a friend, she was over and she was watching me play, and she doesn't have a PlayStation, and she kept looking at me. She's like, "Where's that noise coming from?" And I was like, "Oh, the controller." And she grabbed it. She was like she couldn't believe. She was like, "This is so weird feeling just like," she's like, "You feel the game." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like I guess that's true."
I actually found the best uses of it with the symbiote because there are these, especially the first time when you get control of this thing, which happens when Peter is saved by it after getting very fatally stabbed. I told spoilers. Okay, here we go. And when you first start using it, like there's these gurgle, splashy sound effects coming through the speaker, and it's like you can feel the liquid symbiote sort of doing its
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and I love that. That was something that was genuinely amazing, especially also when it came to swinging. Like, the first two games did such a great job of traversing through, but now you've got the web wings, which are, as you're sort of upgrading along the way, your skill set, you're just able to do more and more with those things. And I think you're getting through half of New York by just those wind tunnels and
Yeah.
those vents, which was just so much fun to do. You could spend hours doing that. Like even after you finish the game and you're just in the open world, you could just go on and on, just looking at different sites while you're just gliding, and it's just a really great function. It was used really well in battle as well, especially in these
Mhm.
chases with drones where you're trying to catch up to stuff, which is going to give you some information in a side mission, which I thought was really, really interesting. And so I think that way that it's definitely come a long way, even in these few years, in terms of just playing the game.
I'm glad you brought up the wing like tunnel system. I feel like I have conflicting thoughts, and I don't know where I land because I know they like doubled the size of the map. However, I feel like the wings and those tunnels make it so quick to like fly through things. I feel like I'm seeing less of the city that I did in
Mm-hmm.
the past games. Um, so to me, I was like, because I was sitting down, I was like, how did I feel about the open world? And I was like, I still think it's very like cut and dry and not as advanced as some open world games.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't need to be, because like I also get the what they're trying to do. It's like, okay, if you want that, you're probably gonna have loading screens. So it's like, how do you
Mm-hmm.
give and take? But I just felt like I was like, I feel like I just didn't see a lot. And I think that's just
Mm-hmm.
because like when you're using the wings, like you're just moving faster, and then there's so many of the tunnels that I was just like doing that. I feel like I just missed a lot more this time around. I probably the majority probably prefer that because we've already seen a lot of the city from the past
Mm-hmm.
two games. Um, but for me, I don't know. It felt like it was taking a little bit away from the awe and appeal of New York City as a setting.
That does happen. I think the open world, even though they've expanded it now to Astoria and the rest of Queens and Brooklyn, I think that's nice. I think we get to
Yeah.
see a little bit more of those areas.
Yeah.
There were a couple of landmarks I was looking for in Williamsburg that I didn't see, but that's probably because I was zooming past it. But I thought they did a pretty good job, even with that limited setting, which I guess, I mean, if you really had to break it down to brass tacks, it's just that Spider-Man is a New York-based game, so you're probably going to be stuck to New York at most, the area.
I love that you went and looked for like landmarks in Williamsburg, because I did the same thing. I was like, I went there, I was like trying, I'm like, is Crown Heights a thing? And then because
Mhm.
I lived in both of those areas when I lived in
Mhm.
New York. And then I was like trying to find my office building on 42nd Street, it's called the News Building. And I was like, oh, how cool would it be if they had like the Bugle in the News
Mhm.
Building?
I did find one thing, which was that one of the apartments that I lived in for a while, I was subletting, was in East Harlem. It was like on the border of that,
Yeah.
103rd Park. I found the address. I found
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I found the address. I found even the building looks very, very much like that, except it's a lot taller in the game than it is in real life. And when I wanted to go into Bronx, which is where my other apartment was, it was like return to playable area. I was like, oh, I guess the Bronx doesn't matter to you guys.
Oh, average New Yorker mindset in the Bronx. No.
Yes, no one cares about the Bronx. So, well, that's too bad. The next thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was just the combat in general, which I thought the first two games did pretty well. There was clearly some stuff they took from the Arkham series, which you can tell in the first game especially, but I think over here they've tried some new stuff, which with parrying became a big part of this game.
Yeah, I have finally had to learn how to parry. I actually had that in my notes because I'm like, I hate parrying. I feel like I just am not coordinated enough to get it down. But I feel like you can kind of brute force your way through the minions. A lot of times you don't have to parry with them, but the like boss battles, the regeneration of their health, like the many different stages, they do things differently. If you're not parrying, I don't know how you can get through those battles unless you're playing on like one of the easiest modes, which there was like one time where I had to put it on an easy mode. It's really embarrassing. It was a chase scene, and for some reason I just could not get it. And I was like, I'm sick of this. So those, I enjoyed it. I think they really built upon a solid system of fighting mechanics.
Like those co-op finisher moves, basically.
Yes, finisher moves. Yeah.
I also like that you could just do that at any point of time, like especially in the side stuff, which is crimes just going on the street. There was a really great co-op thing they did with Wraith a lot, which every once in a while, if you're fighting someone on the street, Wraith is already at the fight, and like, oh, glad you could show up. And so you have this. There's a running joke with her throughout the game where every time a fight is over, you go in for a fist bump and she rejects you, and it happens every time. So regardless of how much you help Wraith in this game, she will never ever give you a fist bump back. So we start off this game with actually the main menu screen because we start off with Harry getting into this chamber with this gooey thing, which we all know what it is. And eventually now it's time for him to come out. And when the game starts off, we've joined Peter and Miles. Obviously, they both know each other as Spider-Man, and Peter's got a new job as a teacher. And you are thrown right into a boss battle with, and this was kind of a surprise for me because I didn't know about this in the marketing, Sandman. Did you know about Sandman being in this game?
No, I had no idea. That was a nice surprise for me too.
Yeah, and you get a great sort of intro in that sense to just the fight dynamics right then and there, because you have to take on mini Sandmans, you have to take on this giant one, try and web up stuff and throw it at him. And it's a battle which I found very interesting because as the game goes on, you have this thing where they're not winning everything super easily. Like, this is a tougher situation for the Spider-Man. It's like, yeah, there's fighting, but we're focusing a lot on collateral damage.
You get a little bit more background with like Peter and his history with Sandman. Miles is seeing that like there's history with these characters, and that's just like a really good way to kind of throw you back into it and then kind of wrap that up and then move into the main story, which I have thoughts on. I don't know if you want me to start with some like of my high level thoughts about like Kraven and Venom and those points, or if there's something else you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's go into that because right after Sandman, you get to Kraven, and
you get to Kraven.
Yeah,
and I guess I'll start, but I don't think Kraven works for me. He's like a cool looking character, I guess. But to me, I don't understand his motivations and like why I should care about him as a character other than like he just likes to hunt. And I'm like, I like look out my window and there's 10 men who like want to go hunting right now. I don't know, just like for the sake of hunting. I don't get it. I think it works as like a background villain, which in a way he kind of is in this because like the catalyst is that third act with like Venom and Harry and Peter and like all of that. However, that really doesn't come until the last act of the game. So for the majority of the game, we're focused kind of on Kraven and the hunters. Like I wish we had a few less Kraven scenes. I wish there was more scenes of like with Harry kind of with his internal struggles. We see that at a high level and like you get it, but I think we could have dived a little bit more into like how Venom or the symbiote really brings out everyone's personal demons. Like there's a great scene with MJ when she's this obvious I know we're in spoilers. But like where MJ turns into Scream, but that kind of is all just in one scene and wrapped up. I feel like that could have been a couple story beats or a few, or even like a few, and more of a focus on MJ.
The Kraven thing, we do get stuff actually on the side, but basically, like, I mean, he is dying. We know that much. They sort of established that he's got this terminal illness, and that's slowly killing him. So he's at this point now where he just wants to carry out one last big hunt, the big thing that'll eventually get to him. So I like that idea-ish. I mean, it was sort of like he's going for the biggest prey. And it comes into play especially when he's taking on Venom, I thought, at the end of the game. Not the end of the game, but like in the...
Close.
Yeah, end of the second act of the game, when you get to that moment where you're controlling Venom. It's a fight where I saw some comments also saying that, it's like he goes out really easily. Like, yeah, I think that's kind of what they were going for because he is basically trying to die in that fight, and so it's almost merciful. Like, I feel like when he finally gets grabbed up by Venom and he's gonna like, thank you. And he wants to die around with like flames around him in a field of flowers. The billboard is a field of flowers. There's flames around. It's like, oh, great. He got his death. So, wonderful.
I get that. I don't know. I just, something about it just did not come across screen controller for me where even though like him dying of the terminal illness, maybe I just was trying so hard to get through the main story that I like missed little things. But to me, I was just, I don't know.
There is a side mission which involves finding the hunter blinds that Kraven has all over the city. As you find these blinds, eventually you get pieces of information in terms of his family and the backstory with like voice recordings of he's talking to his son, his daughter, and it seems like they're all gone now. So he's just kind of got nothing left to lose. And I know what you're thinking. Say it. It should have been in the main story.
It should have been in the main story. Like I haven't finished all the side stuff, so that is why I didn't know that.
Okay.
You shouldn't have. I don't think you should have to do the side stuff to get the main backstory of one of your main villains in a game. Because if you don't do that, like I did, I was like, I truly don't understand what this guy is doing. Why is he doing this? What's his purpose? What is his motivation? Because that's really sad and that sucks. And I will be going back and doing the side missions. And so after that, I might think differently about Kraven as a character. But I stand by my point that it just doesn't make for a good main story to not have that.
Because it does bring up one issue that I do have with the game, which ties into another thing, which is that this is a big game. And because there's a lot going on in it, is that sometimes some things do get sidelined quite significantly. Miles gets sidelined for 3 hours in the middle. He's just gone. And I was surprised by the fact that the story for a while there just completely forgets that he's in the game. Until much later, they're like, oh, by the way, Miles is here. We got to give him a phone call. Like, MJ calls him. Like, I think the suit is doing something to him.
I also felt that because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, what about Miles? I was like, what about his relationship with Genki and Haley? And I was like, what's happening there? And I think part of that's because, like, Miles is desperately trying to get a hold of Peter. And as you're playing as Peter, you're seeing, like, Miles' calls come through in the voicemails. And he's like, where are you? Like, all that stuff. I think we could have seen more from Miles' perspective of like him needing Peter or thinking he needs Peter. Because as we know, like the way Miles' story arc evolves throughout the game is at the end, like him and Peter realize like he doesn't actually need Peter. He is his own Spider-Man. He can do this. But he is struggling with that throughout the game. And I also felt the same way where I was like, I haven't played as Miles in a while.
I mean, eventually they do make up for it, but I do. There is some stuff you do with Miles, again, side mission wise, but it's side mission stuff that comes into play much later. Like it happens. It happens when you're sort of, when the game is like, okay, we need to take a break for a second. Peter is out of commission for a moment now, so we're gonna go over back to Miles in the meantime, and then you get to really spend some more time with him because you can't really switch over in the middle of the story to Miles. You just kind of have to organically go into that because it's a pause in between you getting a phone call from Harry and he's like, "Oh, we got to do this thing. Let's meet later on." And then while you're waiting for later on, it's like, "Oh, let's see what else is going on with the city." And then you cut over to Miles for a bit and you can do some stuff and you can do some stuff with Peter. But there is that bit of a gap, which does lead to some nice moments with Miles's backstory, like well, the backstory, his side missions. This one with Haley, which involves painting a wall, and
Yep.
yeah, I should talk about this because this is quite a great thing they've done. They cut out all the audio because Haley's there, so and the whole thing plays out with like sensory modes. It's like this is where I think they made use of the controller best, where you can just feel certain things and you play out the whole thing with like these audible expressions. Like she has a question mark on her face, an exclamation mark, and that's how she's communicating. I love that little moment. But that's about it that you get for a while. And because the game is so much more focused on Peter's descent into darkness with the symbiote and all that, which Harry comes back. It's a very nice, sweet reunion moment, and you get to go on a flashback with Harry through Midtown High, which I thought was really nice. Yeah, and you find, of course, later on, as you're in Coney Island, things go horribly wrong, and and eventually Harry shows you that he's got his own superpowers, which is the Venom powers.
The suit that he has is not actually, it's like a nod to Agent Venom in the comics. So like that's kind of what Harry is in his Venom form, because he's not like the fully formed Venom or symbiote that we see Peter as at the end of the game. I love Harry as a character. It's like watching him and his friendship with Peter and MJ. I really love that the three of them really had a focus on the story, like them as a group. It's not just Harry and Peter, it's all three of them. They all love each other so much. They have a lot of history. The flashback scenes worked really well with Peter and Harry at school. Like a lot of the Spider-Man stories has to do with like adolescence and growing up and evolving, and they tied that nicely in with Harry and his struggles as he is sick, as we know, and the symbiote's like is not healing him, but making it so like he doesn't feel the pain. He's strong, like symbiote bringing out personal demons. Harry is like terrified of getting like sicker, being useless, dying. So he finally feels useful. And one of my favorite moments is after the Coney Island scene, and like Harry and Peter are like, they have their first almost like kind of mission together. And Peter's like, "Okay, like what's our game plan?" And Harry's like, "We get him." And then Harry just like jumps in head first because he's never been in this situation. And Peter's just like, he has a mask on, but he's like, okay.
You do know where the story is going. At some point, they have to get the symbiote over to Peter, which I like the way that they do that, because you find out Kraven's killing all of these other supervillains who've existed before in Spider-Man. You see Scorpion get killed, and you're like, wow, that's bold. And then you find out off screen he killed everybody. Vulture's dead, Electro's dead. It's just quite insane. And you have this fight that's going on with them trying to save Dr. Connors, the lizard. Eventually, what I do like is like Kraven fatally stabs Peter. And it's a situation where that Peter might not be able to make it, and so what happens? So the symbiote obviously senses that, bonds with Peter, and you have the symbiote Spider-Man now, who is extremely powerful and he's like, oh, this energy is awesome. But he's not able to give it back to Harry. And that's causing a problem because Harry needs the symbiote to live. But the longer the symbiote's staying with Peter, it's making him angrier, it's making him a lot more hate-filled, and it's just making him more violent. So then it leads to some pretty crazy moments. Like he pretty much almost kills MJ in an abandoned subway tunnel, which was quite crazy. Tony Todd comes out in that scene though, which was pretty incredible. He did a great job in this game.
Yeah.
Little creepy moment where he just goes, run.
MJ. Run.
And the way his eyes, like I think that's the first time we really see the Venom eyes because they're
Yeah.
no longer Spider-Man's eyes. Yeah,
Mhm.
with the run, it's a really
Mhm.
great moment.
Yeah, his eyes change. His suit texture also changes because suddenly it's much more alien-like and it's moving and there's
Yeah.
all these effects going around. And something interesting that I noticed after I was done playing the game is that, I was playing with, you get to unlock different suits, of course, as you're playing along with this one too. And you get to keep them. So you can always go back to that symbiote, so even when you're off the effects. But if you do put it on again, the entire interface changes again to this dark blue thing, which has going on. The webs change back to the Venom webs.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Even though you have the anti-venom powers.
Right.
It's just it's a little detail I noticed yesterday. So it's not like this is something that I've been noticing for a week. I was like, I'm gonna bring it up and I'm gonna own this other co-host so bad.
I can't believe you didn't notice that.
Yeah, shame on you. No. But you get a lot of comic book stuff here with Peter. Like, I like the part where he changes Peter's outfit to the suit and like bow tie to
Yeah,
enter.
the tux.
Yeah.
I didn't know Venom could do that.
Hmm? Yeah, he good. There's a famous scene, in fact, I think this is a cartoon where he changes him into the high school clothes because Peter has to go to class, and it's after, yeah. And it's very similar in this game because he wakes up the next morning on like that bench.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's in the all black now. Like he's not wearing any other clothing. He's got like a black sweater and pants. And I was like, oh, it was funny. He woke up and he's just like stretching, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, are you not confused on why you just woke up on a park bench? And then like a second later, he's like, why did I wake up on a park bench?
That moment you're realizing that he wasn't there last night. It was Venom. And because MJ's like, do you remember what happened last night? It's like, no, I don't.
Like, I had the best sleep of my life.
Yeah, it's like, well, actually, you almost killed a bunch of people last night. Like, have you seen our neighborhoods? Yeah, so, but I love the way they handle that entire aspect of the game. It was a huge net positive. Love playing him as that as well.
I really love that Venom is not Eddie Brock Venom in this. Like, he's very different. And I'm like different in the sense that he's different from the Venom I'm familiar with right now, which is the Venom movie, the Eddie Brock, or this other Spider-Man movies. He's like, Venom is not just an asshole, but like he is intimidating and so like powerful and strong. He's not this like sad, wet alien like cat. Like he's actually scary. But yeah, that last act, like once you see he's like, let's heal the world, and showing like them taking over New York City and the hive mind that it creates, how like Venom can create children. Slight nod like the Carnage. Maybe we're gonna see that in a future game. I would love that.
Something that does happen a lot in this game also is that it tries to also bring out the fact that he's just trying to be a part of the world, which is even in the movies recently, like, flaws on all aside. If people don't like the movies, that's one thing, but like there is that aspect of validation. There are moments, like there's a moment where he's confronting Norman Osborn in this game, and he's like, Harry, you got to stop this. And he's like, we're healthy, we're strong, this is what you wanted, right? I mean, like, so
he's like, give me my son back, and he goes, we are your son.
Yeah, it's like this is what you asked for. And even after everything happens, like, I like the fact that he's not immediately trying to kill Peter, which is a different thing compared to the material, because sometimes because after the bond is over, it's like, well, you didn't like me, so you're done. But in this game, they kind of go for this compassionate thing where there's a little bit of Harry in it, which is just like, hey, you remember heal the world plans? We can still do that, but it's just this way, which is not as nice, but it's...
He wasn't looking for the most powerful host. That's not why he wants Peter. He wants Peter because of Harry. And I liked that. And that is ultimately his downfall, because there are moments where he could have killed Peter. He could have ended him. He didn't want to. He wants Peter. He wants Peter to want him. And I think a lot of that stemmed from when he was with Harry, and Harry's desire for, like, he wants his best friend. He wants Harry, he wants Peter to do things with him. That's why, like, Harry didn't want to do the Foundation without Peter. Venom doesn't want to save the world, heal the world without Peter. So that is a good point. I really liked that it wasn't just him going after the best host.
That's why the ending feels a little more bittersweet, because it comes to a point where he's like, well, I've taken over Harry enough now that this is a two-way street. If you want me to go away, he's gonna go away too. And suddenly the fight becomes a lot more personal, because now Peter's conflicted too. It's like, well, I want to kill Venom, but I don't want to kill Harry. I want to get Harry out. And it's like, no, it's an impossible situation. He's way too fused with him now. And, those thoughts have synced up so much, which, albeit is a little rushed. We do kind of go into that a little quickly, but then that's just the one that thing being, the game is already so big that there's only so much that you can do. But it still works out overall.
How do you feel about the ending once, like, Peter is basically, he comes to the fact that he has to kill the host, and he's like, that's going to kill Harry. And Harry dies. And we see Peter and MJ, like, they're mourning the loss of Harry. And Miles, because he has electrical powers, restarts his heart. And Harry is now alive. To what extent of alive, we don't know. It ends, he's in a hospital bed. Doctor doesn't know if he'll wake up, what state of his brain is in. How do you feel about that? Because to me, I thought Harry was going to die 100%. I was like, Harry's dead, going to be dead at the end of the story. That's going to be like Norman's, like, we'll see how he reacts to that.
It was an inevitability, regardless of how it was going to go. That Harry survives-ish, like he's stable enough, but it seems like it's only a matter of time, because he still doesn't have an actual cure yet. And I doubt we're going to do a third game where he's again a villain with the G serum, which after 2 games of showing Norman Osborn with green lighting in the background, eventually they finally had to be like, guys, you know where we're going with this, right? So finally we've got that happening. So I'm not 99% certain he's gonna be Green Goblin, not Harry.
Yeah. Oh, he was wearing green at the end. He had like a full green suit on, he is. It was an interesting choice to not just like kill Harry. And then that really is the like catalyst for Green Goblin and Norman.
I don't know. I feel like either way it was like something was going to give. So I feel like Norman is acting on the inevitability, where it's like you probably bought him like 5 more minutes at this point, but it's like it's not that much, like we don't have the symbiote anymore. That's gone. We don't have that cure anymore. So now we're just going to have to pray, like whatever time he has. But either way, you've lost him. So I guess that part is eventually pushing him over, because he hasn't taken it yet. There's that post-credit scene where he meets Doc Ock, and it's like he's not fully at G serum levels yet. So he's probably just waiting for the moment where it's like, once Harry's gone, well, guess what, guys? So there is something that does happen in a subplot of the game, which I'll mention to you right now. There is a cult of the Flame, which is being chased by Yuri, and she's Wraith, as you probably guessed from the end of the first game and the DLCs that you got with Hammer. Yeah, that's his name. Anyway, so when she's chasing them and you're eventually chasing them too as Peter, eventually there comes a point where you stop the Crimson Hour that's about to happen. But Crimson Hour, which I'm going to just give away even to people who are not done playing the game so far, going into that, eventually the cult leader reveals that this whole plan was to get a bit of this thing that Oscorp seems to have been working on secretly. And it's a piece of the symbiote. And he's talking about how the Crimson Hour is going to lead to this corruption and things around the world. And as he's walking away, he says it's also going to lead to carnage.
Yeah.
And Wraith is like, later on says one of his aliases is Penis Cassidy. So
okay.
So Spider-Man 3 is probably going to be also Carnage. So we're
good. I hope we get to play as him. I loved playing as Venom. The destruction of like the world that you can cause. It just was really satisfying.
I trashed Oscorp. Like when
I was like running around the edges of the room. I was like, gotta make sure I'm getting every single thing that I can destroy destroyed.
Absolutely. And one detail of the destruction, which is aside from the fact that Times Square is rebuilt in a day, apparently, after the whole thing, Midtown High, which was destroyed to bits, is
Yeah.
still destroyed to bits in the later part after you're done with the game.
Hmm.
That doesn't get rebuilt in a day, but Times Square apparently good to go.
Well,
Billboards are
yeah,
fine.
advertising. They can't lose
Yeah,
on advertising money.
yeah.
Capitalism. It's accurate in game.
It's insane. But still, Oscorp has a big hole which is covered up. The church is destroyed from Spider-Man 3, which, yeah, sorry about that, guys. But yeah, that was the church. Little Easter egg. That's the same
Oh,
Union Square
yes.
church.
Oh, I forgot
Uh,
about that. Yep.
MJ is huge in this. What did you think of MJ in this game?
I'm really glad we got more of MJ.
Mhm,
I like seeing her relationship with Peter progress. I like seeing
mhm,
her like she's struggling with like what she wants to be career wise as a writer. Like she's writing these like negative pieces on Spider-Man because that's what JJ Johnson like wants. She's just or Jameson. Um she's I really like her as a character. I like that we got more. I think her combat could have been a little
mhm,
bit better. It was just like they were stealth missions.
mhm.
There wasn't a lot of variety in her gameplay. It felt like she felt very much like a third character kind of thrown in and added at the end of like development production. A little conflicted feelings, but I am glad we got more of her as like she felt like a real fully thought out character. I just wish her gameplay could have been better.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that they definitely improved on it for sure. I think you get to do
Yeah.
a lot more with her, and I feel like somewhere along the way they were watching some of the play with like The Last of Us 2, and they were like, "Hey, Laura Bailey does a lot of stuff here. We have her in our cast. We should do more with her, right?" And so
Yeah.
suddenly you get a lot more with MJ in this one, and she's great as always. I thought all the performances, honestly,
Yeah.
Yuri Lowenthal's fantastic, and
Yeah.
so is Najee as Miles, and yeah, I think the cast did a great job. We already said Tony Todd is excellent as the voice.
Yeah.
And I think they did some good stuff with that. I thought the scream thing was cool, even if it's just a scene, really. But I liked all of that. I did. I think there could. I think at some points you could do a little bit more than just stealth stuff with MJ. I feel like that, but I do think it's an improvement between games for sure. I like what they did with that. I feel like we can wrap up this review without talking about one other thing when it comes to Miles' story, and that is Martin Lee's out again in this game. And so you do get some stuff with him.
I can't believe we hadn't talked about it until this moment, but it's just there's so much in this game. His connection with Miles and it's representative of like the cycle of revenge. Um, I think worked really well. We see Miles like he's holding so much hate for Martin as a character. Um, rightfully so, but like he gets to that point where he's realizing that that is holding him back as Spider-Man. And I guess I'll like there's this pivotal moment where like he tells Martin that he's like I won't forgive you because he doesn't need to. He's like, but I'm tired of holding on this hate for you, and he's like, and I have to let that go. And I think I shed like a tear during that scene because it was just like I was so proud of him. Lee is a pivotal like catalyst for Miles as Spider-Man and as a person, and I'm really glad that they kind of wrapped that up pretty neatly in this game.
I also like that they used him in a way to sort of explore what's driving Peter's anger and sadness in this game, especially with the symbiote. Because even after it gets out of him, which in this amazing fight that you have, after that's done, it still seems like there's a little bit in him. And so with the fact that his negative powers can go inside minds, the fact that you're sort of able to find those centers of pain. It's like what every character has. It's like Miles has his dad, but Peter has Aunt May.
And then I think it was also really important for Peter after all of this when he realized like Lee has now been rehabilitated and he is like taking a new path and a step forward. Like Lee was influenced by Miles to be a better person, and Miles has like let his anger for him go. Miles did something Peter has never been able to do. And
Mm-hmm.
like that is so amazing. And just he's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like he is his own person, his own Spider-Man. Like he's going to be fine and he's going to do great things.
Even I love the one where he does manage to get Peter off the symbiote. The first thing that Peter says is, "Spider-Man did save me back there. Miles did."
Yeah,
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 and it's just there's that bond that's there between them. It's like, you can call me anytime. He's like, yeah, no, I know you've got this, and
yeah,
I think the moment you're specifically speaking to is when Venom starts taking over also, and there's a moment where Miles is just talking to him after he's made his new suit, and he's like, and I know that
yeah,
may still in your mind, and it's like,
yeah.
I think there's a moment of recognition there because Peter tears up in that moment, and it's that moment where he realizes like he understands what it is, to be this hero.
Yeah.
Wrapping all that up, the main thoughts and then final thoughts on the game.
I loved it. I'm happy. Like Insomniac just knocks it out of the park once again. I I'll be happy if they just make Spider-Man games for the rest of my life. Like I'll just continue to play Spider-Man. I think he's one of my favorite superheroes and just characters, both Peter and Miles. I would love a Miles Morales 2 game, Spider-Man 3. Like let's just keep it going. Give me a Venom
Mm-hmm.
game, like
Mm-hmm.
Insomniac they're figuring out what works and improving on it. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited for the future.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff on the way. I mean, there's a side quest which I don't know if you've played this yet, but there's a spider bot thing where you have to find
Yes.
them. But eventually, when you get all the spider bots, you end up with this portal opening. And you
Yeah.
see a bartender who's like, "Hey, I'll just collect those from you." By the way, if you ever run into Miguel, just don't mention anything about this. And the portal closes, and it very much is like the portal from Spider-Verse. So you're
I had a feeling the shockwave kind of thing that comes off the spiders is very like into the Spider-Verse. There's a
Mhm.
moment where Genki's like he's like, this is like Spider-Man tech, and Peter
Mhm.
or Miles is like, he goes, unless someone's like stealing our tech, he's like, what could this be? He's like, or what? I can't remember who says what. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, it's not like there's another Spider-Man out there, is there? And I was like, hey,
Mhm.
like, I see where you're going with this. So I didn't know
Mhm.
the portal, but yeah, I had a feeling it was that.
They've set up enough to do 5 other games, honestly, at this point. Like you can do a whole Carnage game, you can do a Cindy Moon game, you can do a Miles game again,
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3, Spider-Verse, like it big universe. And the whole time you just keep playing all of these games and wondering one thing, where are the Avengers? That building is over.
What? Did you tweet that? I feel like did you tweet an image of that building? I think I just saw that. Someone
What
was
was
like,
it like? I
where
don't
the
know if
hell
it
are
was
the Avengers? I can't remember if it was you.
I don't know if it was me, but it's just the most useless building in the world because it's just there, and you're like,
Yeah.
why aren't you guys doing anything? Like even the Black Cat mission where she gets that wand from like Doctor
Doctor
Strange.
Strange.
I'm like, bro, come out of the sanctum. The lights are on the whole time whenever you swing by in the game, and you're just like, I know
Yeah.
you're in there.
And then they
Just
just like magically take the wand back. They're like, "Oh God, sorry. Like that's
yeah,
mine." They're
yeah,
like,
but like but my understanding is Black Cat needs to get to her girlfriend in Paris,
yeah,
priority one. Venom takes over the entire world. Nothing, no, just sit around, do nothing. I did love the game. All jokes aside, I thought it was fantastic. A little stuffed overall at times, but I think they stuck the landing well enough. I love what they did with Venom and the other villains as well. I know Kraven was hit and miss for you a bit,
yeah.
but I actually loved him. Get off the channel. But I genuinely, I think it's still 3 for 3 with the Insomniac Spidey universe, and I'm super excited to play what comes next. All right, so before we wrap up, this is where before we all say our goodbyes. Caitlin, tell us where we can find you so that more people can come your way.
Yes, you can find me. I'm Kaitlyn Red Wing on Twitter, Instagram, or X if you want to call it. I'm on Blue Sky. I haven't been using it. I'm just using X, I think, until it really is dead. But you can find me there. You can find me on Real Time Strategy on YouTube, podcast channels. I host that with my co-host Sam Mosier. We talk about all things video game industry, oftentimes have guests, developers, um, journalists, that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in the industry aspect, that's where you can find me there.
I listen to your podcast. It's very informative, and
Thanks.
I think you guys are doing a great job over there. So definitely, guys, you please do check that out. And you know where to find me if you're already on this channel watching this video. You have found me. And I hope to see you guys again. So, guys, thank you very much for watching as always, and thank you so much for being on here, Kaitlyn. It's been an
Yes.
absolute pleasure, and hope to have you some other time. Hopefully, not 3 more years from now. Hopefully sooner. But yeah, it's been a really really great time, and everyone, hope you all have a good day.
Thanks for having me on. Bye, everyone.